Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Well, it's Commander's Horn 124. Some new old faces, not just the people you see on the screen right now, but also some returning leaders. And, of course, there's a lot more to talk about than just patch 7.2, which has just dropped. First of all, Commander's Horn, welcome back. Shinmiri, good to have you on the show. For maybe with a little bit more permanence, because I just think that not just in my life, but also in the Gwent community, I think I want to have more objective conversations about the state of the game, because I stream, I get in my bubble. You stream a lot as well. How do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like you get into a bubble right now, or do you feel like the conversations that you have within your chat and within your Discords help keep you grounded? Because sometimes I just kind of live in this bubble.
Yeah, I interact with chat every day on stream, so it doesn't feel too bad. I definitely do feel like my motivation levels fluctuate over time, and I think it's less dependent on chat and more dependent on like the state of the game and how much I'm enjoying the game. But right now, obviously, right after a new patch, motivation levels are at an all-time high. I streamed for like 9 hours the last 2 days.
I went for 7. Yeah, I think I did 7 yesterday. And Shinmiri, I had a rough time yesterday. I lost like every game I played yesterday. It was just one of the roughest streams I've ever had. But I wasn't getting bored, right? Patch day, I wasn't, the thing is, like, I wasn't losing to double ball every game or anything like that. Yeah. I was losing to a variety of things, which made it feel like not boring, but it hurt a little bit because I was trying to make symbiosis work. I think some people have done better than me. But
I mean, it's about, first day is all about experiments, right? And sometimes you experiment with things that might not be the best, and that's fine. You lose games. That's the whole part of the process. And I know that I went through, oh my God, how many decks did I go through yesterday? I went through like 8-9 different decks yesterday. Some of them were terrible, and some of them were decent and good.
Yeah.
But like, you can theory craft all you want, but at the end of the day, you got to test them out and see if they work in practical terms.
The thing, like, I was getting the source of my frustration, I think, because I did play 4 decks. One of them was Blaze of Glory, which just felt like it was kind of the same. So I didn't really feel like I tried it as much as I tried the meta against it. But I did play Force of Nature, and I played Shield Wall a little bit, but I really played a lot of Nature's Gift. And my frustration from Nature's Gift is that I spent like 3 hours on this one, and the points always seemed like they were there. It always felt like it was working. That passive symbiosis leader is a lot of fun. It's really fun just adding first of all, it's +1 to every nature spell you cast, and you can build such a huge board. You get crazy value out of like the Nature's Rebukes, hitting, getting the death blow, spawning another Treant. Your Hamadryad already has symbiosis. Your leader works with her. The points always seem there, but I just couldn't dunk the ball. I always felt like I had it, but it was the patch day jitters, man.
I also played a decent amount of Nature's Gift, and it was, out of all the new leaders, it was that I tried so far, it's the one that surpassed my expectations the most. On paper, it seemed like, it's a 6-point leader with a passive, but I think I really underestimated how much the passive actually does.
Yeah.
Over the course of the game, if you're playing like a Symbiosis Gourd deck with like as many nature cards that you can cram in there, you're playing like 10 nature cards over the course of a game. And so all of a sudden your 6 points becomes 16 points, and you've also got synergy with like Hamadryads and stuff. So you could be getting like 2-4 bonus points on your Vitality easy. So now you're at like 20 points. And it helps you win round 1. It's been very impressive. At one point I remember a round 3 situation when I was playing Nature's Gift, and I had played Ethne. There was 3 Symbioses on the board and 1 in hand, and I had like 5 garbage, 4 provision, 5 provision nature cards, but they were playing for like a bonus 5 points for each of them, and it was just like, wait, my tempering is worth 10 points? What? Why?
I mean, I was adding tempering and not even running dwarves. It just seemed like it was just so good all the time to play nature cards, even if you just didn't get the extra bonus, like being able to get that much value out of a 4-point card. It felt like you could add a whole bunch of stuff. And the issue that I think no one was ever passing against me for the first 3 hours. I swear, I was getting down. Like I even came up against a Battle Trance Skellige player that used his leader to take the round because I was on red coin, and still managed to get me with a Sigdrifa Turtle, unstoppable, disregard for tall removal. That was another thing. I'm not running Heat Wave. How do you solve? Are you playing Poison with Symbiosis? Because I couldn't solve tall removal and still do Devotion. Like I felt like I wasn't really getting.
No,
that
I was playing Devotion. And I'm not sure yet if Devotion is going to be better than non-Devotion. Maybe you just end up going like the normal Heat Wave Oneiromancy route.
That's what I was. That's what I was
at the end of the day.
Yeah. Ethna also got. We can talk. We can actually kind of talk about this. Sort of a nice segue. Ethna was part of the. I'm putting up big quote fingers here, every evolving card getting nerfed, which was excusable until you found out that every evolving card did not get nerfed. And you wonder, well, I wondered, did Ethna really, do you think that it was a safety nerf? Maybe they thought that Symbiosis really was going to take off? Do you think it was just a safety nerf, or do you think that it was an oversight that Viraxis just didn't get nerfed?
Well, for Ethne, I think that if Nature's Gift was not going to be a thing, I think that there was really no justification in nerfing her. But with Symbiosis Leader now being a thing, I can understand nerfing her one provision. She does have an insane ceiling, but her Young Dryads are just really easy to remove. And Nature's Gift now makes it even better to play nature cards, but also kind of protect the Young Dryads a little bit as well. Instead of needing 2 damage, you need 3 damage now if you're willing to put that vitality on your Young Dryad as soon as they come out of Ethnic.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, the fragility of what, like, she's offering Symbiosis 3 essentially, which is like totally worth paying for. But when that's easily answered, now it feels like you're kind of just overpaying for the Symbiosis tag. And the other thing is, like, she also can't retain the hand buff. That's like another annoying thing. But I don't know how you. I don't know how you get around that, really. So
you either don't random target Circle of Life, or you pray.
Yeah.
If you can't get the death blow, you just pray. You cross your fingers.
It means you just can't have her in your. You can't like hold on to her if you're playing Dunka or
Sometimes you just. Like, if your hand buff lands on her in round 2, you just say, okay, screw it, I'm going all in. I'm just going to play that day in round 2.
It's like, you know what, game? You've put me in this position.
Yeah.
But the Viraxis thing is that Viraxis is unique in that he requires like a very specific board state, and he doesn't come packing his value with him, I guess, like with all all the other evolving cards do. But I heard that you had a take on it, that there was another plan for Viraxis. Some people in my chat were saying that during your stream yesterday, you were talking about your perception on what could have happened with Viraxis.
So Viraxis, at the start of Master Mirror, he was actually regarded as like one of the weaker evolving cards. Do you remember that?
I mean, I saw the potential, but yeah, I mean, I remember it being refreshing because when we saw Viraxis, we saw someone who wasn't just spawning the tokens like Usurper, Ethna, Jen, Jack were doing. Like at that point, you were thinking, is he just going to spawn the Volunteers? And is that going to be the card?
He's very unique.
Yeah,
Viraxis is definitely very unique. But like as I'm saying, at the beginning of Master Mirror, some people, including myself, underestimated him because I thought that he would actually brick a significant number of times, since he depends on having another high impact orders card, right, to get value. But over the last 2 months, it's become apparent that he basically never bricks.
Yeah.
Even if you have to separate the Unseas from him, he still has the Carrack Marines, which are just really, really great.
Yeah.
And
Baron.
Yeah. And Adalia to protect a Carrack Marine sometimes. Like, yeah. So he basically never bricks, which takes his downside away. So he's quite better than I initially anticipated. And regarding why he didn't get a nerf, I definitely think he should have gotten a nerf, along with all the other evolving leaders. I had mentioned on stream the other day that apparently, like, the reason is supposed to be that there were plans to change other things that would have warranted him not getting nerfed that were supposed to come with this patch, but they didn't end up making it into the patch. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, feel like maybe they should have just temporarily nerfed him anyways until that change that made it. I don't really want to get into more specifics than that because I don't even know if I'm supposed to talk about it.
Well, I mean, it's sure, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. I totally respect that. But I think that, yeah, like, I think Northern Realms, and definitely for me, like, one of the reasons why sometimes I like to watch more Gwent than play it when it comes to like preparing for tournaments, and also like preparing, maybe even I remember for podcasts as well, like I would do a lot of like hanging out on streams or lurking, because sometimes I need to emotionally detach myself from the game to objectively talk about it. When like I'm still sore about some of the Northern Realms nerfs. Like I feel like Northern Realms got kicked around a little bit in like months ago, and I still feel like, you know, when I see, you know what I mean? Like I just, it's unreasonable. It's like, it's kind of unreasonable the way I feel. So, but like I remember when Visigourd nerfed, I'm like, I took this well. I'm like, it was so good. Visigourd's so good, and like this is like a huge finisher that Northern Realms recently lost. But I just want Trebs to. I just want, if you're gonna bring back stuff like Harmony Reversion, like I can't believe that Treb is still dead for Caretaker's sins. I think that the replaying of Siege and the abuse of Siege through Caretaker took the stats on Reinforced Trebuchet to like such an unholy level. Mm-hmm. I can't believe Harmony came back without something like this too, because I just want this card to be like kind of good again. And Siege just gets hit over and over. Mobilization as well. Take it away. I mean, I could ramble. I feel like I could ramble on this.
Yeah, like I'm totally with you with Reinforced Trebuchet deserving its Inspired effect back. I just think that there's so many things that they could do and so many cards that could deserve some more love and a bit of a buff. And they're like very slowly getting around to it, right? You saw in this patch they buffed some of these 4 provision bronzes in these factions. Was it this patch or last patch?
This patch had a little
bit of both.
I called it modernization, basically, like the extra point on the field medic and stuff like that. So
yeah,
they
light cavalry.
They pepper those in. They pepper in like maybe like seems like 15 of those like a patch if they are doing balance.
Yeah, so it's just to me it feels like they're aware that there are a lot of non-competitive, sort of unplayable cards in the pool that they want to start buffing up. But it's just a matter of time and focus and resources. Like I almost wish that they would just take 1 month and just look at every existing card, do like a sweep through all these existing cards that have like less than X amount of play rate, and just, you know, simple, doesn't have to be like reinventing or reworking any cards, just like point buffs or provision buffs, and make them be considered in decks. That's just me. I don't know if it makes sense for them from a business standpoint and like resource standpoint, but I would love to see something like that. And Reinforced Trebuchet obviously would be part of that.
I think there must be a resource standpoint. I think even though they cut console, for the record, I mean, I don't even know. I can't even remember if I was podcasting around the time that this happened, but my take on it was, and I've said this, it's a brutal take, and I feel bad sometimes thinking it, but I just think that going on to console in the first place was a mistake, because I think it really kind of hurt their resources, because to manage each platform is a lot of work, but they still also have to manage mobile. And when they push changes, I am not a dev. I don't know anything, but I know that pushing changes and changing the client and programming all this stuff, it just isn't as easy as Jason Slama kind of like picking up the phone and just being like, make this card, or maybe it is. I mean, I don't know. Some changes might be that easy, but I'm pretty sure coding a card like make Vincent affect only positive statuses, like that sounds like a coding nightmare, and I don't know anything about coding. But I just imagine that changing Vincent in the way that they changed it, as we see, like going down in power and provisions, providing less of a body on the trade. It just would be like, to amass that amount of changes over time, I feel like it could just be a resource issue.
Yeah, I think like part of it is a resource issue. Part of it is also like the devs have to consider a lot more things than we do as backseat developers. Like we have a perspective that, oh, obviously just make Vincent, only hit negative statuses or statuses that Nilfgaard applies, or that you as a Nilfgaard player personally applied. Well, then you got to think about like card text, how long that card text is going to be, how many keywords there are. When a new player looks at that card, is their brain just going to like explode and not understand like what's going on? And
they've
then
already
also
keyworded status.
Yeah,
like it could break the whole. It could break it all. Like if it happens,
and then like
Gwent
any sort of like back end stuff that we don't see as players. Those are all sort of considerations that they have to that concerns them that we don't really think about. We're just like, oh yeah, snap your fingers and it's done. Right?
I want to throw some love out to the chat here and just mention some of the cards that have been mentioned here. Jamoni talking about Combat Engineer. That's a pretty rough one. That's a pretty rough, outdated card, I think.
What does that do? It's an artifact one?
Yeah, it's like if you have an artifact, isn't it a 5 point? Is it a 5 point card or a 4 point card? But it's like it has a 6 top end if you own an artifact, but it's
like 3 or 4 otherwise.
It's really rough.
Yeah. It's probably like a 4 per
Playable
card.
Bandits. Looking for some playable bandits, especially while we're on this journey.
They did buff bandits this patch.
It's true.
Iron Falcon, Knife Juggler, but the thing is, like, these sort of buffs, like the Iron Falcon Knife Juggler, I don't think they buffed it enough. It went from a 5 for 4 to a potential 6 for 4 that could randomly bleed onto 1s, that could randomly bleed onto Veil units. Like, it's just not good enough, even after the buff, to be considered. So it's like, okay, they took the time to buff it, but the buff didn't do anything. And I feel like cards like Rivian Pikeman also had the same thing, where they buffed it, but it's not nearly enough.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a build around Warfare resupply, like mobilization, maybe, but I mean, that would take some real groundwork, I think, to stand up against like the refined Uprising list that you can run right now. And mobilization, I think I need to do some experimentation, but it's hard to be convinced on mobilization that seems to cater to having like, it's only okay. So if you haven't seen it, the mobilization currently, I feel like I need to show mobilization is now copying a soldier and boosting it by 3, but it's spawning it. So it's like the soldier having deploy, you don't want that because it's spawning it, but it doesn't give zeal anymore. So having order, it still is susceptible, and like you aren't getting that extra bonus. So you've lost the zeal, you've lost the double play on engine, you've lost the deploy, you've lost helping siege in any way because now it's only soldiers. You've lost mages if you've ever even tried it. Mobilization was pretty awesome with mages, but now mages aren't soldiers, so you can't use it there either. And in the patch notes, it talks about Royal Guard, which true, it does put a second Royal Guard on the board, but it doesn't proc the deploy. So it just still feels like the bonus it's giving isn't really a bonus. And it's
I played this leader yesterday with Royal Guards, and one of the only things, bonuses or advantage of this version of mobilization over the previous version is that it gives you an extra copy. So old mobilization used to play the copy from your deck, right? So that means that you still only have 2 copies of a bronze. But now it spawns the copy of the soldier out of thin air. So now you have an extra copy of your Sintrin Royal Guard. So I was playing it yesterday, and it's a meme deck, but it was doing pretty well. It was amassing like 150 points in one round if your opponent doesn't isn't really able to punish you for your setup, which I know is rare, but you have... Now, instead of just playing the extra Royal Guard from your deck, you're just spawning a brand new Royal Guard that gives you 3 points per Royal Guard you play after it, even though it doesn't have the deploy itself. So, I mean, there is a little bit of upside, but it's very neat.
And commandos as well, I guess you can make the extra commando, but the opportunity cost on that is not running Inspired Zeal. So I feel like that doesn't make as much sense.
It wouldn't work with commandos because you need Zeal for commandos to work, but it could work with like Dun Banner maybe.
Oh yeah, I forgot Dun Banner is pretty. Yeah, Dun Banner is a pretty realistic. I've lost to that a couple of times in my life. The Dun Banner copy Pavetta. Mm-hmm. That's a rare one. It's obviously much less popular than Blue Stripes.
Well, because it's 3 power per instead of 4 power per. Mm-hmm. I mean, and now their Dun Banners are 4 provisions, so they're pretty cheap. You know, I mean, I haven't tried it. I think it's like the secondary combo or support I can think of for mobilization. Like, what else would you even use mobilization on that's not Sentry and Royal Guard or Dun Banner? What other situations would you want an extra copy of a soldier?
I think that if you're running a warfare heavy deck, again, this would have to have some sort of plan that made it competitive in some way, and you were actually going for a siege build, you could play the siege master and copy it. Mm-hmm. So you'd have the 2 engines supporting the adjacent units, plus the order would be active for the +2 to protect from there. And then you start playing crazy amounts of warfare, and your ballistas stack up, and you start reinforcing your ballistas, and you're boosting them adjacent. Like, I was playing a little bit of Siege Master for like viewer duels, and the card, even before with its deploy and now with its order, it didn't really ever disappoint me. If I got it in between 2 things, like, my opponent's like, oh, like, not used to dealing with it, but it starts to get away with a lot of points.
Yeah, that's something that I would have to try, because it does scale well. Siege Master scales 2 points per warfare, right? But you quickly run out of good warfare.
Well, that is true, but yeah, it is true. I think that reinforcement really shines in this list, though, and you wouldn't normally run that. So I think that becomes like a must include. And the bombardments would also shine because they also amount to early removal that can maybe bust through a shield and armor and stuff. So I have, maybe I will try this. It just doesn't sound so awful. It just sounds like, because I would run siege in this situation as well. I would use that scenario likely. But yeah, maybe there's something there. I guess the last thing I want to talk about, though, with Northern Realms is Shield Wall. Overreaction, or let's wait and see the refinement first, because I know the hot takes are not that, it doesn't seem that bad right now, but I don't know about the future. I need to hear what you think about it.
All right, so I think Shield Wall, the reaction to Shield Wall is kind of like the reaction to Vincent, pre-nerf Vincent. It's like a feels bad interaction. It feels worse than it actually is, because what Shield Wall does, even if it might end up not being as many points as something like Uprising, Shield Wall makes it so that when you're playing against it, you feel like there's nothing you can do to prevent your threat from getting just annihilated. It doesn't matter how much protection you can give your orders or your threat, your engine. It doesn't matter if you boost it to 6. It doesn't matter if you boost it to 10. It doesn't even matter if you boost it to 15. It doesn't matter if you boost it to like 9 and give it a shield. Like, Shield Wall on Saius will just kill it. So the only way you actually prevent Shield Wall on Saius from killing something is hiding it behind a defender. But then they just duel the defender, and then they duel the thing that you're trying to protect with the Varaxis.
It's true.
So it's like, okay, I have this strategy that I'm building around. I'm building around this Keltalis, for example. Well, Shield Wall on Saius. Every time you match up against Shield Wall on Saius, your Keltalis is just dead. Like, it doesn't matter. That's the feels bad part. And in terms of like how good Shield Wall actually is, it varies greatly depending on how tall your opponent goes and how much removal value they're giving you. If your opponent's only playing 6-point units or shorter, Shield Wall's probably significantly worse than Uprising, because Uprising can get you that like 11, 12-point Scytheman afterwards in a long round.
I find
So
like
it's gonna be meta, I think.
what was that last part you said?
I was gonna say it's gonna be very meta dependent on how good Shield Wall is if people give you that removal value, that tall removal value.
Like I feel like my take on it was there are leaders that already give you that massive amount of removal as well, like Blaze of Glory, for example. And then it also loads Hjalmar follow-up, I guess, which would probably be able to take out stuff as well. I know the dual breaks through shield, and then there is the 2 charges on top of that because we're talking about a single-use leader. That's why I'm worried about the refinement. I started to feel like maybe a Dahlia was redundant. You could use those points somewhere else because you can protect those drummers yourself. I think it's just it's a matter of time, but I don't know.
I guess it depends on how many shield wall targets you put in your deck. I would still play a Dahlia because at 10 provisions, she's really cheap. And you don't really want to be using your leader charges on Drummer or Frigate, in my opinion. Like maybe Frigate because it's a 2-point per turn engine. But you want to be reserving your shield wall for Anseus, for Ana, and sometimes you need to reserve it. Like if you're playing Selkirk in the list, then you also need one for Selkirk, and then that's it, right? Some lists are playing Visagoda, so you need one for Visagoda. You still have even with 3 charges, it's still pretty limited, and you want to reserve your shield wall charges for the most impactful cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you don't have to just apply it to drummers. You can apply it to Ildiko, or you could apply it to so many things. I'm just going to cut the call and restart it. I think for some reason your audio it's actually on Discord, so it's not necessarily the stream. So I'm just going to disconnect. I'm going to say the call went meh because the audio was okay. I don't need to do this right now. No, I don't want to do this right now. I just want to get back in the call. So I think that should probably refresh it.
All right. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Are my lips? Am I still lip syncing?
It is a little off. It might be because I'm running Photoshop and Gwent at the same time as well as this. I thought it wasn't going to be that big a deal or even affect anything, but it could be that. Okay. But the good part is this is about conversation and the chat saying it's better. So that's really the most important part. All right.
Yeah, good.
So we were talking about Northern Realms. It's fine if we move on to monsters now. I think is probably the one I want to talk about. I played a little Force of Nature. I also went up against a few Force of Natures as well. And I also saw Ocean Mud, our fellow faction ambassador, seem to have a pretty good run with it today or yesterday. I didn't see the list.
He said he went... I was talking to him this morning, actually.
It looked wild. Yeah, it looked wild.
He said he went like 15-1 with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's first day results you have to take with a grain of salt. Whether it's like 15-1 or the other way around, like 1-15, it's you can't really read too much into it. I looked at his list. I have to say personally, I'm not that big of a fan. He said what he did with his list. It's like do you want me to link it in the chat? I think I have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we're talking about the brand new leader for monsters, which is the return. One of the reasons why I have this podcast called New Old Faces, not just because it's us on the podcast, but also we got Woodland Spirit back, we got Dana Mead back, and we got Morvran Voorhees back. And it feels like history is repeating itself. You're playing a leader card with an effect.
So there's the list.
Yeah,
I put it in chat, and it's a Force of Nature Haunt control list with double Predatory Dive. Oceanwood was telling me how he plays it. He slams Haunt in round 1, whether he's red or blue coin, and then in round 3, he plays like a no unit strategy, like a Potion Mud strategy with no potions. He just like double Predatory Dives Karathi Heatwave in round 3. And then last, say, Force of Nature with Boost Crone for 9 plus 11 points, like 20-point finisher.
So yeah, that sounds like it kept me off guard for sure on day one. Sure on day one. He has his way of playing, right? He has his way of playing.
For sure.
He has his, yeah, sounds like an Ocean.
I-
Checks out.
the reason-
held in chat. Yeah, it definitely
reason
sounds like an
I-
Ocean deck.
The reason I'm a little bit doubtful of how good the deck actually is because his game plan boils down to slam Haunt round 1 and hope they don't have Bomb Heap. I feel like a lot of decks could do well, especially on day 1, if your game plan is cross your fingers they don't have Bomb Heaver and just like abuse them with your scenario.
Yeah.
So,
well, in the world
like-
we're playing right now, it feels like the scenarios are a little bit more like kind of the as intended. You're playing it and it's vulnerable before you can complete it because you're no longer bringing things out of the graveyard at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, all the
Bomb Heaver feels like more like actually like much stronger because it's going to connect more often.
yeah, no more comboing your leader with scenario. Is there any leader that can still do that now? Still left in the game?
Double cross does play 2 cards. You have no control really over what the second card is, but if it
Yeah.
is like in the mirror, like Nilfgaard could proc the double aristocrat perhaps.
Or if you find like a tutor card, like an Oniromancy in your opponent's hand, then you could use that to play an aristocrat on the same turn.
Playing a pirate in Syndicate doesn't do anything. I need to remember like all the procs and everything at work. I think no.
I think for the most part,
For the most part, it's very
they're all
difficult to do
gone.
it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do it. But yeah, I mean, it seemed like Force of Nature was the big star. It's the only monsters. Well, I played against one Overwhelming Hunger, but it was like the same deck as last month, so there's nothing really remarkable about it. But
I played the White Frost deck. It
barely,
was doing really
I didn't
well.
see it at all. I didn't see it at all yesterday, so I don't even know what they're running.
A little bit of White Frost. I played it myself, and it was one of like, I would say it was like one of the better decks. I played maybe like 10 decks yesterday, and I think it was like in the top 4, top 5 of the decks that I tried yesterday. It was like an Aridin Wild Hunt deck, very heavy on Frost. So it was like everything that could make Frost except for I think just 1 Red Rider instead of 2 Red Riders, and it used Aridin to much better effect than before because you just had so much extra Frost. You'd always have a lot of Frost on the turn that you played Aridin.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about White Frost as a leader is that you no longer lose Frost value when your opponent just row stacks, because you can immediately move something to the other row and get Frost. Like before, if your opponent row stacks, you had to Ardgaeth or Red Riders, and then the next turn use a Bruiser to push them.
Yeah.
Right. So then you would always miss that 2 or 3 damage of the Frost when that on the first turn when that row's empty. Now you can just leader it right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems the movement is really, I feel like, the star, that particularly, because it makes all sorts of things viable when you just have that extra piece. Jumping back to scoia'tael, movement got a lot of buffs actually for scoia'tael as well. I didn't try it at all or see it yesterday, but it got the Doblathana Sentry got 1 point of armor for its engine. The Doblathana Brigade, the Riot Brigade, the one that pings randomly, you can target that damage now. And
on the first ping,
on the first ping only, and then the leader itself got 1 provision. With, of course, there are a number of movement cards that are fine, like Milena and Boar and stuff like that. So I still think that that's probably, there could be something there, because there's always, if you don't end up getting, like there's always that Riot Brigade leader, like crazy dump of points at the very, very end if you don't end up setting anything up. So it always seemed like you could do it. But I saw those buffs and I thought there could be something there.
I think for me, from my perspective, that's another example of like too little buff. So the 1 armor on Sentry doesn't really do anything. It like prevents it from dying to Tourney Joust. But it still dies to Stunning Blow. It still dies to any 5 damage like Thunder or Rebuke or Boiling Oil. So it's very little. And then the Vrayhead Brigade, random to target it on the first deploy, that's also very little. It's not actually adding more value. And then the leader 1 provision. Like the deck was not close enough to being competitive that these tiny changes are going to push it into competitive territory. And I feel like it just needs more. It needs more, either in terms like more raw points, or it needs like more. It needs like a new card that's like a new win condition card for that deck.
Yeah, I guess there isn't really like the payoff card is like the brigade in a lot of ways, like because the only way you'd have a better payoff is if you had a card that was better than that when it was moved. So like a gold card that probably did the same thing. Yeah, but I mean, Dryad Matron, I find that what scoia'tael is doing right now is getting more of their power out of their bronzes right now than ever, which I think is great. But yeah, no payoff for movement. Could be it. Dragon's Dream, the big blue bug is saying. Could be that, could be that payoff. I don't want to live in that world, man. Even if that's right, I don't want it to be right. I'm just going to pretend I didn't see it. Just ignore the truth. That's what we have to do sometimes. Anything that we haven't talked... I mean, we haven't talked about Nilfgaard. I didn't see a ton of Nilfgaard, believe it or not, although I did lose to one imprisonment. I beat a lockdown. That was about it, I think.
I'm sad about Nilfgaard.
There's some double ball, though. I did still see double ball. Every day I see double ball.
I was just talking about Nilfgaard with somebody earlier today, and so I feel like the leader changes hurt Nilfgaard more than any other faction. So Imperial Formation lost a charge.
Yeah.
Now it feels significantly weaker. Tactical Decision was seeing play in like double ball decks, and now I'm not really sure what to do with Tactical Decision. It's kind of like an Afan leader, but not really, because unless you thin so much that you can guarantee that you draw your Afan, you have to thin 6 cards to guarantee that you can draw your Afan. It just feels really bad when you don't end up drawing your Afan. Then what are you using your leader for?
I played against one person who was running both Pack and Brigade, Vigo, all that stuff. And Hyperthin was already kind of getting the consist. It was a Tibor deck, was running Yen and Triss as well, and stacked Afan. And then Tibor was guaranteed to be like the pull from like there was Village in it. It was weird because Shinmiri, you remember yesterday when Twitch went down?
Yeah.
So this was the game I was playing when Twitch went down. So I remember like typing like what my opponent was doing in the chat, like waiting for it to refresh and get better. But I was really distracted by my opponent bribery at the Philippa, and then she seared my Philippa and used it against me in the bleed, and I ended up losing. But the list was trying to do like something with Hyperthin, and it succeeded ultimately against me.
Okay, but what does the Morvan leader actually do for Hyperthin? Hyperthin already thins enough that it gets Tibor consistently as the only unit in its deck in round 3. So why do you need Morvan?
I feel like it's just the guarantee of Tibor, or perhaps something to set up Joachim. Actually, somebody in the chat just said that as well. And
Joachim what?
Well, I guess it depends, I suppose. I'm not really...
Hyperthin? Hyperthin doesn't play Joachim, or are we talking about a different deck now?
It's true. That's true. We are talking about different situations.
The new Tactical Decision leader, it feels like it's pretty fancy, and that you could do some cool things with it. But when I actually get down to the nitty gritty and try to theory craft something for Tactical Decision, I start questioning myself and wondering, what is this leader actually doing?
Yeah, is it better than... Because Imperial is Affin plus 6, and in this case, Morvan is 6, so you'd get Affin, potentially.
But Imperial...
you get it all at once.
Guarantees your Affin... Even if, like, as long as you don't draw it, as long as you can mulligan it, it guarantees your Affin. Whereas Tactical Decision, you actually have to draw it. You get 3 additional draws, but you actually have to draw it in order to get it.
Yeah, you have to draw it. You get 3 draws, and if you keep it in you just keep it in your hand. There's a hand fixing element to it, but I guess Nilfgaard wasn't struggling so much with consistency that they would maybe need this. But you could really like min max and put a lot of junk in your deck, knowing that you would just never ever have to see it or draw it, because you'd always have 3 better cards than your worst cards. So you could probably go really spiky and just put like a lot of 4s in.
Well,
I'm just thinking about it. I'm thinking about it now myself. I haven't built the deck yet.
How often, with old Tactical Decision, how often when you used it in round 3 were you seeing 3 cards you're just like, meh, I don't really want to play any of these?
Actually, like all the time. Yeah, all the time.
Like with new Tactical Decision, you're just going to see 3 meh cards a lot of the times, and you're going to replacing your three worst cards in your hand with three mech cards. Like at best, it's not going to be that much of an improvement most of the time. I don't know, and this is what I was kind of saying. Nilfgaard got hit the hardest with the leader changes. Imperial Formation nerfed. Tactical Decision seems like a worse version of in terms of just like practical applications. I can't really think of any right now. And then Strategic Withdrawal was okay. It was pretty good. I was playing it competitively.
I like
in
it
like
too.
ball decks. And now it gets replaced by Imprisonment, which is lackluster in my opinion.
It's thematic.
It is thematic.
It is, and it is, just as a shout out for obviously longtime players and listeners, it is very similar to the old Radovid ability, but better because you can use the two charges in two different, like separate times before you had to use both the locks at the same time. So it was kind of ridiculous for that reason.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of like back. That ability is back, and that was a good, like a leader having a lock with Imposter. It felt like you just can kind of play around that or bait it out, or just kind of like Enslave, you can kind of just make it awkward. But with Imprisonment, you just know those locks are coming for you, as if like the collar's on the board. Like it's just those locks are going to come for you. There's two of them. Like I tried to play Kiki, just happened to queue into Imprisonment. Both Kiki's locked. Like that was just miserable, of course.
Sure. I mean, it is very thematic. It is like kind of like no fun allowed for your opponent, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a lot of points, and it's also not synergistic with stuff like Vanamar and Vatier, those sort of lock synergy cards. I guess it's more synergistic with something like Slave Driver. Slave Driver, I was actually worried yesterday in a matchup against an Imprisonment player. There were 7 locks on the board.
Slave Driver's dope there. Yeah, that's actually one tactical decision you were saying, like, don't you sometimes see like 3 meh cards? I would tend to play tactical decision with like some list with like where I would be playing a lot of locks, like Ox or something, and I would actually be able to tack into the Slave Driver I knew I would see, and then just actually get like 7 or 8 out of it, and that was like the worst I could do.
So personally, I like thinking about Nilfgaard decks that I want to build. I played a double cross Assimilate Master Mirror deck, which was actually a lot of fun yesterday and felt pretty good. And then for like a more serious deck, I would probably play like Poison Soldiers with single ball. But what leader? Right now, I'm like leaning towards Lockdown because I don't really see another great Nilfgaard leader. And Lockdown isn't great, but at least, you know, he's effective. Lockdown is effective at what it does. And I would even consider Imposter, I think, before Imprisonment. I don't know what do you think about that in terms of Imposter versus Imprisonment?
There are a lot of great cards to take, and you do get the double dip, like you shut it down and you have it. And they did disbuff the ability, and it wasn't bad. And like you said, the Nilfgaard leader decisions are a little bit harder now. I actually have a single soldier ball. I just kind of modified one of Saber's lists that he had used one time, and it seems like it would be fine. It's Imperial Formation though, but I haven't really thought about point saving. I thought about like actually making more point. Like I'm like, can I run 2 amnesties? Like it's possible that Lockdown could be the answer, or like Imprisonment, like those extra provisions at least being used, because the lock in a lot of cases can really hurt. Not as much as denying the leader, but it could be good enough.
Yeah, I do want to try some stuff with Imposter. I feel like it's gotten I think multiple buffs since it was released.
Yeah,
and it's just been in the shadow of Imperial Formation and Tactical Decision and Strategic Withdrawal for a while. Now with those options gone, I feel like Imposter could be a sleeper pick.
Yeah, I mean, you take a Carrick Frigate, you lock the frigate, and you take the frigate. So that's like that's like a good turnaround.
Oh, yeah, or you lock the Ana, take the Ana, and it boosts the Ana too, right?
Wait a minute. I am wrong about this ability. This is not a bronze only situation. This is an any card situation. And I am
any card
embarrassed.
situation. You can do,
I
do
have
it
not
on
looked
Ana. You could do it on
Yeah.
Seius, right? To prevent them from using Veraxis on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also get like a 6 point on Seius on your side of the board. But I don't think it comes with Zeal. You could do it on like Reynard Odo.
Yeah.
If you're up against like Ursine Ritual and they're playing Vildkarl, you do it on their Champion of Svalblood. 14-point leader against Champion of Foulblood. Feel like there are actually a lot of good options.
I think time will tell, but I don't know how much time will tell. We're used to seeing, I mean, it's going to take a couple more days before like anything stands out as being like a big problem. Usually one of the streamers is going to crack something open, and there's going to be that tidal wave that crashes into the meta. Like, is it too strong, or is it just going to take us a little bit of adaptation? But like the calls for day one nerf of Shield Wall, I just don't think we're there. I don't think that it's like something that's an emergency like yet. I wouldn't consider anything like that.
I think in terms of power level, it's probably not there for like emergency hotfix, but in terms of feels bad, man, like can't execute your game plan, it does. I can understand why there's outcry about this.
Yeah. I guess I'm worried because it's like I know it's coming. It just hasn't happened to me yet. Like eventually it'll come for me too, and the bubbles will be huge.
Yesterday, my first 15 games. I had 0 games against Shield Wall.
Same. I really didn't. I saw it once yesterday.
I saw it a total of like 3 times yesterday. It came more later on in the day, but like first part of the day, I think everybody was just like thinking, "Oh, I know Shield Wall with the previous meta Uprising list is going to be good," and like people were just rather trying out some of the newer concepts, newer archetypes, and then later on in the day, they're like, "Okay, I want to win now."
Yeah,
right.
It's funny because I came up against I queued into a couple people in my chat. In the positive and negative way, as in like I found them in my chat after the fact, during, or I knew the names. But one player came in after I played him, and it was double ball. And I remember for the whole game, I'm just like, it's patch day, dudes. Why? Just why? Like, what about this deck is so like amazing that? I mean, it's obviously just it's the winning part of it, I think, that people really like. But but then the person came into my chat and said, "Sorry, I was playing double ball. I was just getting so sick of Northern Realms." And I'm like, I couldn't imagine being sick of it yet at that moment. It was like maybe like the first 2 hours I was playing.
Yeah, I've heard mixed experiences too. Like some people were saying that they only saw Northern Realms Shield Wall, and some people were on the same page as me, seeing like none of it. But yeah, there were people also saying they saw a lot of people playing Nilfgaard trying to target Northern Realms. So that might have been part of the factor that drove down the play rate of NR.
I saw, out of all my games, I think I had the most Harmony matchups. There were so many Harmony matchups for me. I was getting poisoned like every game between Harmony and Nilfgaard. Half my games were poison related, I think. And I remember thinking to myself, like, am I happy that I'm getting poisoned more? Like, do we have a card set and a meta where I can like build against this now? Like with Veil, like is it still this? Is it
Crystal Skull in every deck?
Is it going to be difficult? Like I always loved using Crystal Skull, believe me. And the Veil is fine. Yeah. I mean, I like the Purify stratagem, but this is fine. I wish we could have both. But it's fine. It'll work. But it's like, it's very back. The Dryads, like the Whispers, the Weeping Willow, it's all there.
I had a little bit of a nostalgic moment yesterday playing Harmony again for the first time in months. I was never that big of a fan of Harmony. But it was kind of cool to play it again. It feels significantly weaker than it.
Yeah.
Well, have you tried it yet? Or, I mean, you've played against it.
I played against it a lot. It does seem like it's a little weaker, but it definitely feels like very strong because you do get to play that proc every Harmony leader, no matter what. And of course, Oak is still good, and they've gotten some other cards that are pretty good. But also, I remember before the patch came out, do you know Windave, or do you know the name Windave?
Yeah, I know of him. He's in my chat sometimes.
He's been like a high level Gwent player for just a really long time. I remember he was like always on the top list when lists first came out. He posted an analysis of on Twitter. I wish I had the link. I actually didn't. I didn't prepare this, but he posted analysis on Twitter of what old Harmony and new Harmony where it like drops off, like the comparison of doing double waters versus now having waters and Dana. Yeah. And the drop off if one of your dryads is removed is like it's extremely weaker than it used to be, because of what the removal does for you. The fact that you can't really ever play 4-4-4-4, like get all of those procs, and every turn they get bigger and bigger. It was pretty good. It showed the, I guess, the fairness of Harmony in today's world where you can't do double waters.
Yeah.
But it still felt pretty strong because the poison package it got me. It just got me all day. Even when I was playing Bruiser, even when I was playing double Taskmaster in Force of Nature, I lost the poison.
Yeah, maybe we need more people need to play more Purifies again. I feel like last month or two, Purifies have fallen a little bit off the grid, and it might be time to come back. I don't know if Harmony will actually end up sticking around. For me, I felt like the Nature's Gift Symbiosis deck was stronger.
God, it's like Harmony. I wanted that to be true all day yesterday, but I was matching up against Harmony as Symbiosis, and maybe that's a bad matchup. But I was I couldn't beat that. I couldn't win that matchup. I was feeling it out, and my deck was probably like obviously not very good because I love theory crafting, but like on the spot sometimes I just want to keep playing, and I keep like I get huddled into a deck that isn't good, and I'm like, no, I almost won, so it's like I don't need to change anything, but it's like it could be so much better, but I feel like I'm almost there.
Exactly. So like what I imagine when you describe that, I imagine you're like, playing a deck that's gimped, that's handicapped. Yeah. But you're a good player, and you're able to almost win a lot of these matchups despite playing a deck that's handicapped. And then you're just like, well, I just need to keep at it, and I'm going to start winning these games. But you could be in the meantime playing like a deck with much more potential.
Shinmiri, I was running offerings for the Hamadryads.
Oh God! Oh God, McBeard, what have you done?
The thing is, that's not what I was hooked on though. That was like an idea I had like near the end where I was like running out of ideas. But I'm like, honestly, like then I could play the Hamadryad. I had you can laugh at this one too. I was running Isengrim's Council just for sages. Is that also
that's not too bad.
That felt okay because like I was always getting the sage out, and I cut waters eventually because I'm like, I always want to play sage first. You get the tree right away, and it felt good. And I'm like, if I can play the sages and Hamadryads without ever worrying about losing them because I could always get them back with offering, and that built my gourd, maybe something was there, but that can't be the best.
I might try out Sage. I didn't think about that one.
I love Sage.
You want to play Isengrim's Council in your deck anyways, because it's like one of the best nature cards. But what I found was in my deck that I didn't really have... I had one elf in my deck to Isengrim's Council, and then not that many dwarves either. So a lot of times when I would Isengrim's Council, it would just be like this one dryad choice.
Yeah.
And... you didn't really get much flexibility or many options from your Isengrim's Council, and yeah, you could definitely play Sage.
I think that might be one thing I was getting right. Gulo is saying in the chat, Red Rain was playing Necromancy for Hamadryad last night. Oh, that's got to be worse than offering. Like at least I was running like the Duncanel Guardian. I was trying some new stuff, but I felt like Duncanel Guardian was able to set up Circle of Life, and it was able to set up offering. Not like in a lot of cases. So, but I didn't really lean into that deck yet. But it was, but the Isengrim's Council on Sage, I felt okay.
I don't feel like Hamadryads are impactful enough to run Necromancy and Offering for them. Like I feel like Hamadryad is almost like a necessary evil for the deck, just so that the leader gets an extra couple points. Otherwise, I wouldn't even want to run Hamadryads.
The Symbiosis is nice, and I always forget that it has it.
Yeah, I want to run more nature cards, if anything, but I've already slammed every single bronze nature card into my deck, and there's no more.
Yeah, that's how it feels. As we approach the top of the hour, I do want to cover. I mean, we can. I don't have a lot to say about Syndicate really at all, but Skellige did. I did see a little battle trance, and I honestly thought that Lippy is like untouched, right? Like, is Lippy? I thought would be taking.
Oneiromancy nerfed.
Yeah,
Oneiromancy got nerfed. But yeah, like Lippy's one of those things that people know, and they've played Lippy. They know what it is. They know how it worked. It's nothing new, right?
Neither is
and
Double
day
Ball.
one people. Yeah, but like Lippy doesn't have a good matchup against Northern Realms. If that's what you're worried about.
Well, I was just
because it doesn't have that much
win.
Control.
I just feel like Lippy can puke the points out, right? They have a risk-free way of playing, and I felt like Skellige was losing some of its tempo, I guess, with second wind and stuff, but Lippy would still be able to, Saris just point madness that it can do.
Yeah, I mean, Lippy might still be good. I'm not surprised that people aren't spamming it on day one. I guess is all I'm saying. I played a non-Lippy Ursine Ritual that utilized the new thinning tools. Like Birna and Skirmishers and Scald, they feel really good now.
Yeah, they're strong.
Same with Crow Messenger. They feel really good. You get a ton of consistency in the deck, and you're not really giving up anything.
Got somebody in the chat here, Guti, saying he got 2,500 already with Lippy, so there's that.
Nice.
There is that. There's some.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that people probably aren't thinking of it as the first deck they want to try out on patch day.
Unless there is something, Shinmiri, that you wanted to talk about Syndicate, I think that for the most part, I think the leader is not. It's not really. It doesn't seem like it's anything. Like it feels like it's.
I haven't played any Syndicate, but I have a problem with the leader, Pirate's Cove, is that you cannot separate. Like it should be two separate stages. The first stage should give you a Sea Jackal, and the second stage should give you 4 coins. But the fact that when you use the leader, you immediately get the Sea Jackal and 4 coins, you can't use the Sea Jackal's fee to spend any coins before you get the 4 coins. So like you end up over profiting a lot of times, or you can only use it with 5 or fewer coins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, which also goes against the horde nature of the Sea Jackal, because if you want to just use it when you have no coins, if you want to invest those coins right now, you could be bypassing horde value later. I just don't really like that ability. I don't like it. I feel like it seems like they just had to get rid of Wildcard, and I mean, I don't like, again, we're in our armchairs, we're in the back seats. It's not so easy. And there was somebody at one point in the chat that said, I'm a game developer. I can confirm that it's definitely not as easy as it ever seems. Mm-hmm. But this one feels like there could have been like maybe a passive ability put in there or something.
I think it's fine if you give it 2 stages. Guaranteed Spender is pretty good. It's a little bit lackluster with the fact that Jacques now is a spender. But imagine a world where Jacques was not a spender, I think this would have much more utility.
I mean, I'm imagining a world where you have these leaders that actually have like stages. Like imagine if every leader was like stage 1, do this, stage 2, do this different thing, or perhaps stage 3, and it would be, I mean, obviously we live in a world where there's like lots of 3-stage things. We have the evolving cards and the sieges, but I mean, that would be cool to have a leader that had kind of like a real mixed bag of things it could do. May not be consistent enough, but or maybe like make a choice now, make the other choice later, but you can choose either one of them first. It seems like there would be some programming hurdles there, but it seems interesting. I mean,
it's an interesting concept to me too. Yeah. And it wouldn't be like, I see chat saying that's called a scenario. That's just more scenarios. I don't think that would be anything like scenarios in terms of the turn off, because scenarios are a turn off because they're just like grossly imbalanced, right? When they don't get answered by artifact removal. But if it's a leader that has 2 different stages, it's going to be balanced under the assumption that your opponent just can't do anything about it anyway, so it's going to be fair.
Yeah.
So it's not going to have the scenario issue just because it has 2 stages that do different things.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Before we wrap up, first of all, I do want to encourage some people in the chat. Throw some. We'll answer like a couple questions if you had some questions for us. But I also just wanted to chat with you, Shinmiri. You said you tweeted that you were just coming off a high from Gwent Open. We just cast Gwent Open number 3 from here. We're at the desk right now. Isn't that crazy? That we're still at the same desk. But so it's funny. I don't feel removed from it at all. It's almost like this could be killing time in a technical delay. But it was a great experience. And for me, I was getting a little down on Gwent. I was waiting for the big changes. I was getting excited for big changes that didn't necessarily come in the previous patch. So I was just kind of, I felt like I was really waiting. But being involved, like that connection that happens when we do these community events, much like this podcast, one of the reasons why I wanted to get it started again, getting in touch with the community and having more of an observational view is very invigorating. So I feel you coming off that high, being part of the event really brings back my love for Gwent, even if I still get mixed feelings when I play it. I really appreciate the game when I see the best players play it like that. I wanted to hear your take on kind of like your experience doing that this time.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you a little bit. This past month has been probably the month that I've played Gwent the least. But yeah, casting Gwent Open was an absolute joy. Seeing some of the high level plays, casting alongside yourself. And now with the new patch, it feels like I'm reinvigorated. I love casting. I love being part of the Gwent Open and Gwent Masters events. I wish we would be able to do this more often. Obviously, I wish the COVID situation would be resolved and we could, hang out together in person.
It's all weird now, yeah.
Yeah.
Play some board games.
It's a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. Play some For Sale.
Play some For Sale. Yeah, it's right here. I mean, this is the box. I have it in my travel case, but man, this is a game right here, dudes. If we're doing, this is a fun one. In fact, this game is so fun and interesting to play. Look it up, guys. I'm not going to explain it all. That I almost want to imagine like 1 or 2 more rules to it that would be like that would elevate it, but not make it far too complicated because it's so simple, right? You're just like evaluating how much a number is worth, and the number is always like it's really hard to explain if you've never played it before, but you're bidding on these properties that go 1 to 30, and you're just trying to get your best value for the properties.
Yeah, I love these sort of games. And regarding Gwent, also like the current state of Gwent, I'm really relatively happy with the balance between the different factions. But what kind of got me down last month was it felt like most factions only had like one archetype that was clearly superior to the others in terms of competitiveness. And we saw that with the Open, right? I think this Open was like the official tournament that had the fewest number of different archetypes. Like everybody brought Devotion SK, everybody brought Devotion NR engines.
Yep.
And then there was like double balls, and then there was Shiru. Shiru was the only archetype for ST.
Hidden Cache was the only archetype.
Yeah, Hidden Cache Passiflora.
And then there was one Fruits List.
And I really just want CDPR to tweak underplayed archetypes, buff underplayed archetypes, give them either more points, fewer provisions, or newer support cards that help incentivize people to play these other archetypes, because I think that's my main complaint in the past month is that factions felt like there was only one way you could play them if you wanted to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it did feel a little samey by the end of the finals. I still think that the choices that were made, and I feel like the matchups were all so interesting, and there is still that variance that can really do some deciding, which is really, it's frustrating when there's so little of it in Gwent. You see like your whole deck, so it's too bad when you see some variant stuff. But it was an exciting tournament. I
Well,
really enjoyed it.
the buffs to all these bronze thinners is going to help with like the consistency, which I think is a great thing. I think they did a really good job with the bronze thinners change.
I remember when Homecoming came out, consistency was always a concern for Gwent, which is one of the reasons why we do not have blacklisting anymore, and it's never coming back. And at the time, boy, I hated it. And I still don't like going like 4P card, the same one. And I hate it's like fooled you. You actually didn't have that mulligan. It actually wasn't even there.
Yesterday, I had one Symbiosis game where I had mulligan tempering 4 times.
Oh god. Oh god, I know. And like the one game where I tried to play Dun Banner, of course, it was at the end of the deck. You know, it just happens. It just happens. Quick question here: what are our take on the Borsodi brothers? I think that Ewald is being slightly undersold with the strength increase, but I also think that I don't really know if there's room for them in a competitive deck anymore. And I do think that Horson's Freak Show is probably still playable. What do you guys? What do you think about it?
Horson's Freak Show has 1 more armor than old Ewald.
Yeah, you got buffed.
So I think he's totally playable. People were cutting Ewald before, but Syndicate was also the Syndicate meta deck last month didn't have that much control, and one of the reasons was because people cutting Ewald. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity cost in removing something like that. New Ewald and Horst.
Like Horst is like a mini Siggy. He's like a mini Siggy Reuven in a way, and Ewald's kind of like a Saren type card. Yeah.
If you play Ewald first, you get 7, and then if you play Horst afterwards, you get 10.
You get 6. Do you get 6 coins? You get
6 coins with a 4-point body, right?
Yeah.
So it's 17 for 2 7 provision cards. So 17 for 14. Which is 8.5 for 7, which is not that good. Like 8.5 for 7 is not good, especially when you have to. It's kind of like a 2-card combo. You don't need to draw them in the same turn or the same round, but the numbers aren't quite there, especially for a faction like Syndicate that is an engine-heavy faction where your opportunity cost for playing the Borsodi brothers is like cutting Lieutenant von Hurst and Saul and like Imki, like those Dire Mutated Hound, those sort of cards. I don't think these new Borsodi brothers are very competitive.
I just see it maybe working in like a situation where you're building a short round 3 where you need like tons of money really fast and you just need to do that setup and you've got some sort of like solid game plan. But that kind of stuff is beyond me personally. I hear what you say about the numbers, and it does sound, when you boil it down like that, a little watered down. But I mean, the coins are
yeah. Coins don't count as 1 for 1, but sometimes you don't play Ewald first and Horst second, and then you get fewer coins as well.
And you don't always have Philippa, let's say. So I mean, that was a pretty good world tour. I knew it was going to be a pretty organic conversation. There's obviously a lot to talk about Shinmiri, but we're up on the hour here, and I think that's a pretty good step back in to a little conversational podcast, and I've had a great time, and I hope you did as well, and I hope the chat had a great time as well. Thanks for stopping by. And I know you are going to head off and get your day started with another day of testing. What are you leading off with today, Shinmiri?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna just go jump right into my stream after this. We didn't really play any Syndicate yesterday. That was the only faction that we didn't play at all. So I'll probably try out some Firesworn Swarm, or maybe some Collusion Pirates Cove today.
Yeah, Collusion.
And then I also want to play some Nilfgaard. I barely played any Nilfgaard yesterday. So those are the 2 that I'm looking at to start, but I'm open to other suggestions as well, wherever the day takes me.
I didn't get to play Battle Trance yesterday, and I think I want to do that. And I also am very interested in the Imposter stuff that we talked about. I think that Imposter as that leader, a single soldier ball, might just be good stuff. It might just be Nilfgaard good stuff right now. And now I got to check all these symbiosis lists because I couldn't make it work. So now I want to see what other people came up with. That's probably the last thing I'll do.
Awesome.
All right, my friends. Well, that'll do it. In this case, I will play an outro, and you can get yourself started off with the stream as well. And I will. I'm going to play an outro, but I'm not going to go offline. I'm going to play a couple games of Gwent before I cut the podcast. So you guys can chill with me for a little bit, and then while I'm going to go cut the podcast and send a host over to Shinmiri, and see what he's
Thank
up to.
you. Appreciate it. And it was great talking to you.
Great to see you,
Looking forward to
man.
next time.
Take care. And thanks so much for watching, everybody. And thanks very much for your support on Twitch, YouTube, and Patreon. Going to start pumping out the old content here once again for Gwent. But in the meantime, for Shinmiri, this is McBeard. Best of luck on the path.